Thanks so much to all my patrons. Join now to help support the channel and help pick the books I review on this channel. Link in the description. And I am done. Okay, so I just finished listening to Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, and I want to give you my unedited thoughts on finishing this book, which was literally just right now. So, yeah, this is okay. It's probably like a 3.5 stars. It was good, but not great. I mean, it was decent, I think is like a way to say it. It was enjoyable in parts and unenjoyable in parts. Overall, the ending saved it. But this was very much a huge disappointment to me because I read this book before. I read it. This was one of the first large handful of fantasy books that I read years ago, and I fell in love with it. I never read a hard magic system before. It was extremely enjoyable. I loved virtually every single thing about it. And I've done many rankings videos since I read those books a few years back, and I've always looked fondly upon this book and of the series, and I considered this first book a very easy 5 stars and one of my favorite books that I've ever read. So to go into that and then read this and feel so much more negatively than I ever would have imagined was definitely a wake up to me. And in mostly bad ways, but in some good ways too. I mean, it is nice to know that my tastes are changing. It's nice to know that I'm more aware of what I like and what I don't like, and that I can kind of curate myself to find more books that I'm into. It's disappointing, obviously, that I don't love a book that I formerly loved, and that I just, feel like my tastes are just kind of drifting away from that sort of thing, or maybe it was never there. Maybe. It was a good book, and now that I've read more, I just like some things more, and now that I'm judging more things against this, I don't like it as much in comparison. I don't really know, but this book definitely had some problems, and it had some great things as well. So let's go through some of these things. Let's break things down into my old school style categories, whereby first we talk about the world building, and we'll break it down into the major sections of the book. First let's talk about plot. So if you've not read this, my guess is you have if you're watching this, but if you've not read this, I'd say the basic plot, without spoiling anything beyond the first couple chapters, is that there's this world that has a lot of mystery around it, that is covered in mist, and it's obviously a very, very cruel world where these volcanoes are shooting off all the time, and there's ash everywhere. It's disgusting. And there's very much 2 classes of people. There's the people that are in charge, and there are the workers. The workers here are called 𝐶𝐴, and they are just essentially slave labor. And inside of this world, people, mostly the nobility, can have these special powers. And the book spends a great deal of length, and we'll talk about that in the negatives in a moment, explaining all these powers in excruciating detail and what they can do. But this girl, Vin, finds out that she is one of the very rare people that has access to all of the powers. So most people that have access to these powers, which is very infrequently, somebody will have 1 power and only 1 power out of like the 8 or so that are out there. But every now and then, even more rare than that, is what's called a Mistborn, and they have all of them. And so it's the story of this girl, this Mistborn, that is trying to take down the evil emperor, like the very classic, Dark Lord type person with no redemption value, but a lot of intrigue along the way. So from a plot perspective, I feel like when I read the plot on if you charted out the plot for me and you broke everything down, on paper, it's awesome. It's a really fun plot. I love the world that's set up here. We'll talk about the world in a moment, but the setting up the world so much and ingraining the story within this is very well done. The basic story of this evil villain that took over thousands of years ago, or at least hundreds of years ago, and it feels overly oppressive and no way to try to solve this problem. And this girl trying to get through this team of kind of like a heist group that's going to try to pull off this crazy upheaval in society, and going through with that, and then reading exactly how they go about trying to do this and the ending of the story. All the plot points hit. But the problem with the plot is the pacing of the plot. In that it set things up so beautifully and in a very perfect way. I love the setup. The ending, likewise, was incredible. Lots of information being, teased along the way. And finally, when it all reveals itself, it feels earned. It's very Brandon Sanderson-esque, and I say that in the most positively of ways, because I think Sanderson is up there in the greats of the fantasy genre that know how to end a story and know how to craft a story so that the ending feels very fair and surprising and makes sense. So, but in the middle, you have way too long of explaining what the powers are, and slowly learning the powers and unraveling the secrets of the world as this heist gets momentum. But the heist needing momentum does not take very many pages. A large majority of this book was learning about the hard magic system, and Brandon finding a way to explain this hard magic system in a drip-like formula where you learn about it a little bit at a time. Now, I suspect on a first read, especially if you haven't read a ton of fantasy, this is going to work perfectly. This is a unique aspect of the way you should tell a story. It makes everything make sense. It makes you understand the magic system, plural, magic systems, because there's several in this book. I think you can conceivably say that there's 3, in a way that doesn't feel like it's info dumpy, and it does a good job at that. But I already know these magic systems, right? And so to read a whole book that's about slowly having a character learn about them loses so much of the luster of the first time when you're learning about it as well. It's like, internally, I'm like yelling at the characters, like, hurry up, let's get to the plot, because I know the magic. I'm not having fun learning about this system. It's painstaking, and it happens consistently. I mean, there's sections of this book where this main character learns and gets taught by each of the members of this thieving crew, which have access to one of the powers, so that they can impart to her for a large amount of pages how to learn their powers and what to do with them. That is painstaking after a while. And then other characters start talking about their magic systems and how those work, and storing energy and how you use it. And it's all like, enough, Brandon, enough. It ruins the reread. Now, what does make the rereads nice is the hint dropping along the way. But that becomes a lot more relevant in books 2 and 3, at least the way I remember them. And, a lot of the major things that are going to come out of those second and third books, it's just not super, super relevant to the first book. And so I didn't love that. I also did not love that this side book called, is it the 11th Metal? Is it called the 11th Metal? The little novella, or if it's just a short story, but I think it's like novella that talks about one of the main characters in the book and what happens to him after this book and during the book. And I hated that. And it made me really soured on the story. It felt so cheap. It took something that I thought was awesome and ruined it. And if you have read this, if you read both, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of people loved it. I loathed it. So to go back and read this book and in that character that it's about, it features here, I look at it so much more negatively than I did the first time. And that's not fair to this book, but it is, I think, fair to the way Sanderson crafted this whole story together. And it made me look a little more negatively on this story. But the other problem I have with the plot here, and I know this is a lot of problems, but I did love a lot of this. I did like a lot here. But I have to focus on these negatives because of how glaring they are and how different that I'm perceiving this second time reading them through. But this love interest that Vin goes through with one of the characters is pretty cringy. It's very teenage love. It's not the sort of love story that I want to read. Now, I get that I often will talk negatively about love stories, but I almost always talk negatively about them when they're written for a younger audience. And maybe Sanderson intended this for my audience, and I'm just perceiving it in a different way. That's possible. But these teenage love stories, most of the time, are fraught with the problems that come when you know how dumb teenagers are. And I'm not saying that because I'm like, oh, I wasn't dumb. No, I was an idiot when I was a teenager. And thinking about how cringeworthy my relationships were when I was that age, it's embarrassing. And I would never want to have somebody read my love life story because it would be very boring, very cringeworthy for them, and it'd be silly, and it doesn't make sense because teenage love very rarely does. But reading about it isn't an enjoyable experience for me. I'd much rather read about a more mature relationship where it's not the first love. You already know what you like and you don't like, and that means a lot more to me, in part because that's in the stage that I am in life. And so maybe this teenage stuff would have appealed to me more when I was a teenager, and it would have connected with me, even though I at one point could have connected with this. But nonetheless, I don't love it. And so to have that whole middle section be a big jumbled of learning these powers, doing this relationship BS, I can confidently say that I did not like that part. So plot-wise, yeah, not great. But, I mean, great and not great at the same time. Great on paper, not great in execution, I would say. Now, world building I thought was magnificent. I mean, this world is alive. And this is a world, I think there's a lot of different ways you can define what a good world building is. And the thing that I always come back to is, does it stick with me for the long term? I can't tell you how many books that I've read over the last couple years where the world just kind of comes in my brain on this side and it leaves on that side after a few days or weeks or months or years, right? And it just all feels like the same. This world is unique. I mean, and it's not just because of the couple unique things that Sanderson puts out there that make it different intentionally, but it just feels so dang alive. It feels real. It feels like the characters are living and breathing. It's written in a way that, even though it's not with the painstaking detail that some authors can go down, like a Robert Jordan, where they will tell you exactly what every single little thing in a room looks like, Sanderson does a really good job of making, at least for me, being able to visualize everything about the landscape and the rooms and the houses and what the towns look like. And it's just beautifully done. And you put that very good attention to detail, but not overly done. And you combine that with this really interesting world that, and the unique components of it, with the mist and the ash and the way the world is created and the mystery that goes around with it. It is top tier. And also top tier, I think, I'm hesitant to say it now, but I will also put the magic in the top tier category, even though I just took a long time kind of tearing it down, because it's really cool. I just don't need to learn about it again. But I think it's really cool. And like almost everybody says the same thing, that they love it. But I think even more than that is the fact that this is really like 3 magic systems in one. Really focused on 2 of them. Third one is a little bit involved in there. But it's really well done. Like, so many authors could have done part of one of these and gone like, man, I just wrote some awesome, detailed magic in this. But Sanderson wasn't content with that. He's like, I'm just going to throw more and more. And when you think it's done, it's not. I have these other things. And it's like this guy went, I'm never going to write another fantasy book again. I'm never going to get another shot here. I need to shoot all of these ideas that are going on in my brain in one book because it's my only chance to do it. Obviously, not only did that not happen, but I'm sure that's not what he thought, but Sanderson obviously has written dozens and dozens of books since then, and has had many opportunities to create other magic systems, and has excelled in almost all of them. So he's done a wonderful job, but truly, I think it's wonderful here. I mean, the way the metals work in relationship to one another, the way they all feel very unique, the way they do these powers that I haven't really seen elsewhere. I mean, how easy is it to say like, oh, this character flies, or, this character is really strong, although that does exist here. But to say like, oh, they're going to shoot out metal away from them or pull it in, and what does that mean? And what can you do with these powers when you combine them with other powers is really well done. It feels very video gamey in a good way. So very well done on that front. When I look at the characters themselves, I'm going to give like a middling grade to the characters. I think Vin feels well developed, and the backstory of Vin feels well justified, and it makes sense. And there's still more mystery to unfold there that makes things even more make sense here. I think Vin is well done. The others feel almost like caricatures of themselves. I'm sure I'm botching that. It's been a long day. It's really hot where I live. It's like 110 degrees where I live right now. I'm dying. So my brain's not totally working right. But it's like they have like 1 or 2 character traits that make them unique. And Sanderson really lays into them really heavily. And what it does is it makes them not feel like real people in many ways. And it's just too leaned into these tropes. They don't feel like they have the depth and complexity that some of his other characters in other books would have. And there's a lot of different characters in this, and there's just too little time to spend with each of them. And so, yeah, the characters was a bit of a miss, but, not horribly missed. When it comes to prose, I would say this is Brandon Sanderson level prose. It is easy. It's accessible. It is not dumbed down. It does a very good job at being able to be read by most everybody. It appeals to the masses, I would say. And I think that's both a good and a bad thing. I mean, if you are looking for something more poetic and philosophical, you look elsewhere. If you are looking for a really fun time, though, that's going to pull you in with every sentence, this is the way that this is one of the secrets to his success is the prose that he uses, that I think he uses intentionally. I think he can write different kinds of prose if he really wanted to. He's a smart guy. But this is what he's chosen to do, and it works really well for him, so I can't knock that much. And I devour these books every time he puts them out, so it works for me too. If every book I read was like that, it'd be disappointing. But to be able to read some of my books that are written like that, I think it works nicely. So overall, it's good stuff. I'm still going to recommend this to people, especially people. I mean, reading it the first time, I still maintain that the first read experience is a really good one. So definitely will still recommend this to people. And I'm still looking forward to the second and third books. And I think a lot of the problems I had with this book are solved in the future books. We'll see. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Amy, Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, JD, Jonathan, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝗟𝗶𝗸cie, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Slay, Sydney Baker, Tahir, Zion, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Harry W, Joe UK, Kat Mick, Michael Sugarman, Sky, and Tyler. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.